Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we are turning our attention to one of the most magical places on Earth. Marine biology is the study of life in our oceans, from bright coastal waters to the deep sea far below. Beneath the surface lies a world that operates by different rules. Life there can take on a myriad of unimaginable forms. It can glow brightly or thrive on total darkness. Entire ecosystems are built on drifting currents, shifting chemistry, and rhythms set by tides and the moon. Some creatures travel farther than any land animal ever could, while others remain rooted in place, quietly shaping coastlines and seafloors over millennia. The ocean connects everything: climate and weather, breath and food, past and future, in ways we are still learning to understand. This is a place of scientific mysteries and remarkable discoveries, where familiar animals reveal unexpected behaviors and where tiny organisms affect the entire planet. Marine biology invites us to look at how deeply our lives are tied to the sea. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. Let your shoulders soften and allow your eyes to grow heavy. And let your mind settle into stillness as we slip below the waves together. Let's begin. A whale's heart can be the size of a small car. Picture an animal so large that its body needs a pump on an entirely different scale. A blue whale's heart is built for a life of long swims and deep dives, where oxygen must be used carefully and delivered efficiently. During dives, the heartbeat can slow dramatically, which stretches each breath and each mouthful of air as far as possible. Then, at the surface, the rhythm speeds up again to refill the body with oxygen. That heartbeat drives blood through arteries wide enough that a human could not wrap their arms around them. This is not just a size story. It is a design story about solving the problem of moving energy through an enormous body in cold, heavy water. Marine biologists study these bodies to understand endurance, efficiency, and the limits of mammalian life. Some jellyfish can reset their life cycle and start over. Most animals move forward through time. They are born, they grow, they reproduce, and they die. Yet a few jellyfish have a trick that bends that usual arrow. Under stress, they can shift from a mature stage back into a younger stage, returning to a form that can start developing again. It is not immortality in the storybook sense. Danger, disease, and predators still matter. But it is a biological rewind that changes how we think about aging. Marine biologists study this because it offers clues about how cells decide what they are allowed to become. It also raises a strange ecological question. If an organism can repeat parts of its development, how does that shape populations over time? In the ocean, where conditions can swing fast, this kind of flexibility can be a powerful survival tool. Sea cucumbers can eject organs to escape predators and then regrow the organs. If you were threatened, you might run. A sea cucumber has a different plan. Some species can expel parts of their internal organs as a distraction, leaving a predator with a mouthful of unpleasant tissue while the sea cucumber slips away. It is a last resort, and it is not painless. Yet the story does not end there, because the animal can regenerate what it lost over time. That ability changes the stakes of survival. A close call does not always become a death sentence. Marine biologists study this because it offers a window into regeneration and into how tissues rebuild without chaos. Sea cucumbers also play a quieter role that is easy to overlook. They process seafloor sediments as they feed, which can influence how nutrients cycle through the bottom of the ocean. So this odd creature is both a recycler and a remarkable escape artist. It survives danger by sacrificing something precious, then rebuilding it patiently. The ocean holds mountain ranges longer than the world's continents. On land, mountains can be worn down by wind, rain, and ice. In the ocean, there are enormous ridges and peaks that sit in cold darkness, changing on a different timetable. Some are formed where tectonic plates pull apart. A new seafloor is created in long volcanic seams. Others are extinct volcanoes that rose from hotspots and then sank as the crust cooled. Because much of the deep ocean is sheltered from the same kind of erosion that scours land, these structures can persist as recognizable landscapes for very long stretches of time. Marine biologists care about this geology because seafloor shape guides currents and creates habitat. A ridge can steer nutrient-rich water upward, and a seamount can become a meeting place where fish gather and predators follow. The bones of the ocean floor help decide where ocean life flourishes. Some types of fish change sex when their social group needs it. In certain reef communities, the role you play can matter more than the body you were born with. Some fish live in social groups where one individual holds the top breeding position and the rest wait. If that dominant fish disappears, another can shift sex and take the role, restoring stability to the group. This is not a quick costume change. It involves hormonal shifts, changes in behavior, and changes in reproductive organs over time. The result is a social system that can adapt when the environment is unpredictable. Marine biologists study this because it challenges the way many people think about biology. It shows that reproduction can be flexible and that evolution can shape bodies to fit social reality. It is also a reminder that catching the biggest fish on a reef can have unexpected effects, because the biggest individual may be the one holding the community's reproductive balance. Dolphins can give each other signature whistles like names. In a moving ocean, staying connected can be hard. Dolphins often travel in groups, and individuals can separate and reunite as they hunt or navigate. One way they keep track of each other is through signature whistles. These are distinctive calls that can function a bit like an identity label, and other dolphins can copy that whistle to address the individual. It is not human language, yet it suggests a social world that recognizes individuals over time. Marine biologists study this with underwater recordings and careful observation of who calls, when they call, and how others respond. The findings point to complex relationships, including long-term bonds and coordinated group behavior. A signature whistle also matters because sound carries well in water. A dolphin does not need to be seen to be known. In the ocean, where visibility changes by the minute, a recognizable voice can hold a group together. Seals can sleep with half their brain still awake. The ocean does not always offer a safe place to fully switch off. For seals, rest must fit around breathing, staying warm, and staying alert to danger. Some seals can enter a kind of split sleep, where one half of the brain rests while the other remains more awake. This allows them to keep some awareness of their surroundings, and it can help them surface for air when needed. They may drift quietly in the water, or rest at the surface with a posture that looks calm, but is still controlled. Marine biologists find this fascinating because it shows how sleep can adapt to a life that cannot pause. On land, many animals can hide and sleep deeply. In the sea, the need to breathe and the risk of predators never truly vanish. Humpback whales cooperate, blowing bubble nets to trap fish. Sometimes hunting is not about being faster than your prey. Sometimes it is about teamwork and planning. Humpback whales can work together to create a bubble net, which is a rising spiral of bubbles that acts like a moving fence. Fish often avoid pushing through that wall of fizz, so the whales can herd them into a tight cluster. Then, with a coordinated surge, the whales rise through the trapped fish with mouths open, taking in a huge gulp of water and prey. Marine biologists have recorded variations of this behavior, including timing that suggests roles within the group. It is a striking example of cooperation among large wild animals, and it shows that intelligence in the ocean can be practical and strategic. The bubbles are not decoration. They are a tool made from breath, shaped into a trap, and shared among companions who benefit together. Orcas teach hunting traditions that differ between family groups. Orcas live in tight family groups, and their lives are shaped by learning as much as by instinct. Different groups can specialize in different prey, and the techniques they use can be passed down like traditions. Some may focus on fish, while others may pursue marine mammals, and the skills required are not the same. Young orcas watch, practice, and refine what their elders do. Over time, these learned behaviors can become a defining trait of the group. Marine biologists pay attention to this because it means conservation is not only about saving individuals. It is also about protecting knowledge. If a specialized group disappears, the learned approach to hunting can vanish with it. This makes orcas feel even more like a culture-bearing species, where survival depends on memory, teaching, and shared experience. In the ocean, a family can be a school, and tradition can be a lifeline. Sea turtles navigate with a magnetic map written into their senses. A young sea turtle can begin life on a beach, scramble to the surf, and then vanish into an ocean that looks almost featureless to human eyes. Yet years later, many return to the region where they started. One tool in that journey is Earth's magnetic field. The planet is wrapped in invisible magnetic patterns that vary by location, and turtles can sense those differences like a built-in compass and map. Experiments show that when the magnetic signature around a turtle is changed, its swimming direction can change too, as if it believes it has been moved elsewhere. This guidance system matters because a turtle's life is full of long distances and shifting currents. Marine biologists combine tagging, tracking, and lab studies to understand how these travelers make decisions at sea. It is navigation without landmarks, and it is one of the ocean's quietest marvels. Octopuses taste with their arms as they explore. An octopus does not have to bring food to its mouth to begin understanding it. Its arms are covered with sensors that can detect chemicals, so exploring the world is also solving it. When an octopus reaches into a crevice, it is not only feeling the shape of the rock, it is also reading the invisible trace of what has been there, like a scent you can touch. That matters in a habitat full of hiding places. Crabs wedge themselves under ledges, and snails seal into cracks, and the best meals are the ones you cannot see. An octopus can investigate with many arms at once, each one acting like an independent scout, while still belonging to the same curious mind. Marine biologists find this fascinating because it blends senses we usually keep separate. For an octopus, the boundary between touch and taste is thinner than we imagine, and it makes the seafloor feel richly readable. The ocean's twilight zone holds more animals than all surface waters. Between the bright surface and the deep black sea floor sits a vast middle region, often called the twilight zone. There is enough light to hint at day and night, yet not enough to grow forests of plants. Even so, it can be packed with life. Much of it is small and easy to miss, because surviving there often means avoiding being seen. Many animals are translucent, silvered, or shaped like drifting threads. Others move with slow, deliberate pulses that waste little energy. This crowded layer matters because it is a bridge. It links surface food to deeper ecosystems, and it can influence how carbon moves through the ocean. Marine biologists explore it with nets, cameras, and acoustics because so many animals there reflect sound like a living cloud. The more we look, the more that dim middle ocean reveals its surprising abundance. Many ocean animals rise at night in the largest daily migration. As evening comes, a quiet procession begins beneath the waves. Countless animals that spent the day in deeper, darker water start swimming upward toward the surface, and they do it almost in unison. This is the daily vertical migration, and in sheer number of travelers, it is often described as the largest animal movement on Earth. Small fish, shrimp-like creatures, and jelly-like drifters follow food that becomes safer to reach after sunset. Darkness offers cover from sharp-eyed hunters, so night becomes feeding time. Then, before sunrise, many of these animals sink back down again, returning to deeper layers where they are harder to spot. That routine shapes the ocean like a heartbeat. It moves nutrients, it feeds larger predators, and it helps shuffle carbon downward through the water column. Marine biologists track this movement with sonar because the migrants can appear as a rising wall of life. Sharks can detect weak electrical fields from hidden prey. A shark hunting in cloudy water does not need a clear view to find a heartbeat. Many sharks have special sensors around the snout that can pick up faint electrical signals produced by living muscle and nerve activity. That means a fish hiding under sand is not truly hidden. Even a small twitch can give it away. This sense is especially useful at close range, where smell and sight might not narrow the target quickly enough. It also helps sharks orient to the world. Electrical cues can guide them toward prey tucked into reef crevices and toward animals lying still on the sea floor. Marine biologists study these sensors to understand how predators succeed in different environments and how sharks choose where to hunt. It is a reminder that the ocean is full of information, but humans do not naturally perceive. For a shark, the sea is alive with signals, and the body of another animal leaves a detectable signature. Coral reefs are animals that build cities of stone. A reef can look like colorful rock, but it is more like a living construction project that never truly ends. Each builder is a tiny animal that makes a hard skeleton beneath itself. Over time, generations stack those skeletons into ridges, caves, and towers, which become shelter for countless other creatures. Small fish use the cracks as hiding places, and larger predators patrol the edges like nightly security. Many corals also partner with microscopic algae that provide food, which helps reefs grow in clear, sunlit seas where nutrients can be scarce. That partnership turns a simple polyp into an architect of entire ecosystems. Reefs also shape coastlines because they can break waves and calm the water behind them. In marine biology, reefs are a lesson in patience and teamwork, where tiny lives create huge structures that feed and protect the ocean around them. Many deep-sea animals make their own light in total darkness. In the deep, darkness is not just a mood. It is the default condition, hour after hour, year after year. Yet many animals there carry their own solution, which is bioluminescence. Some produce light through chemical reactions in their tissues, and others host glowing bacteria. The reasons vary. Light can be a lure that tempts prey closer. It can be a warning that says, "Do not bite." It can even be camouflage, because some animals match the faint light from above to erase their silhouette. Marine biologists use cameras and careful observation to learn what these signals mean. The deep sea is not silent. It is a place of flashing codes and sudden glimmers, where survival can depend on a brief spark. When you imagine the deep as empty black water, you miss the truth. Many creatures there are living lanterns. Whales can carry songs across ocean basins through seawater. Sound travels through seawater in a way that can feel almost magical. It moves farther than it does in air, and it can bend through layers of temperature and depth. That is why many whales rely on sound as their main sense for finding others, navigating, and sharing information. Some species produce patterned songs that repeat and evolve over time, like traditions carried by moving families. In certain conditions, low-frequency calls can travel for immense distances, reaching far beyond the horizon. Marine biologists record these voices with underwater microphones, then study the rhythms and changes across seasons. These recordings can reveal migration routes, breeding areas, and even the impact of human noise. A whale's world is built from echoes and tones, from pulses and long notes. When we listen in, we discover a living ocean that is not only vast in space, but also vast in sound. Every breath you take is linked to tiny ocean plankton. With every inhale, you are connected to a world of drifting life that most people never notice. In the sunlit ocean, microscopic plankton capture light and turn it into living matter. In the process, they release oxygen into the air above the sea. These organisms are not a single kind of creature. They include tiny plants and algae, and also small grazers that eat them, all floating in currents like a slow snowstorm of life. Their blooms can rise and fall with seasons, storms, and nutrients, and their changes can ripple up the food chain to fish, seabirds, and whales. Marine biology watches these invisible communities carefully because they help set the rhythm of life on Earth. They are small enough to slip through a net, yet large enough in total effect to shape the air in your lungs. The ocean is still full of species humans have never seen. Even with satellites and ships and submersibles, large parts of the ocean remain poorly explored. Many animals are small, fragile, or hidden in places that are hard to sample, so they can slip past our notice. Deep seafloor sediments contain tiny organisms that look like dust until you examine them carefully. Midwater zones can hold transparent creatures that vanish under bright lights. Some species are known only from a single specimen brought up in a net, which hints at an entire unseen community. New discoveries often arrive when technology improves or when scientists look in overlooked habitats like underwater caves and seamount slopes. Marine biology is full of that frontier feeling, not because the ocean is empty, but because it is crowded in ways we have not fully mapped. There are still living forms waiting to be named, understood, and placed into the story of Earth. A single teaspoon of seawater can hold thousands of living microbes. What looks like clear water is often a crowded living world. In one small spoonful, you can find bacteria, tiny algae, and microscopic grazers, all moving, feeding, and competing. Some are producers that turn sunlight and dissolved nutrients into new life. Others are recyclers that break down scraps of organic material. So the ocean does not run out of usable ingredients. Many microbes also form partnerships, trading chemicals in ways that let them survive where none could manage alone. Their work happens at a scale we cannot see, yet it shapes the health of whole coastlines and the productivity of fisheries. Marine biologists study these invisible communities because they respond quickly to change. A shift in temperature or nutrients can rearrange the cast in days, and the rest of the ocean feels the difference. Deep sea vents build entire food webs without any sunlight. Far below the surface, where daylight never reaches, there are cracks in the seafloor that leak hot, mineral-rich fluids. Around these vents, life does something that feels almost impossible. It builds a community without green plants, without photosynthesis, and without any daily sunrise. Microbes use chemical energy from vent chemicals to make food, and bigger animals gather to harvest that hidden buffet. Giant tube worms can thrive there, and some rely on bacteria living inside them to turn chemistry into nourishment. Crabs and shrimp patrol the warm edges, and fish drift in and out like visitors to a rare feast. These vent oases also appear and vanish over time, so the residents must disperse to find new ones. It is a reminder that the ocean can power life in more than one way. Kelp forests can grow faster than many plants on land. In the right conditions, kelp can turn a bare stretch of coastline into a towering underwater forest in a surprisingly short time. Each blade reaches upward toward the light, and the whole structure becomes shelter, highway, and nursery. Fish weave through the fronds to hide from predators. Sea otters wrap themselves in kelp while they rest, so they do not drift away on currents. Even the sound of the kelp forest is different, with fronds brushing and popping as waves surge through. Kelp also changes the water around it. It can slow waves, reduce coastal erosion, and create calmer pockets where young animals get a safer start. Marine biologists love kelp because it shows how quickly habitat can appear when conditions line up. It is a reminder that the ocean can build living architecture at a breathtaking pace. Ocean currents move heat like invisible rivers around the planet. If you could see temperature the way you see clouds, the ocean would look like it is threaded with moving ribbons. Currents carry warm water away from the tropics and bring cooler water back, which spreads heat through the seas and into the air above them. This is not a surface story alone. Water also sinks and rises as it cools, warms, or becomes saltier, creating layered movement that can travel for great distances. Those moving pathways influence where fog forms, how storms gather strength, and why some coasts feel milder than their latitude suggests. Currents also transport food. A small change in flow can mean a rich feeding season for seabirds in one region and a lean year in another. Marine biology tracks these currents because they are the ocean's delivery system, and life follows the routes. Some squid flash patterns that function like underwater conversation. Squid live in a world where sound and scent can disperse, and where distance can swallow detail. So they often communicate with light and color. Their skin contains cells that can expand and contract to create shifting patterns, like living pixels. A squid can ripple bands down its body, pulse spots on and off, or change contrast in a way that seems timed to the movements of nearby squid. In some species, these displays appear during courtship, rivalry, or coordinated movement, and the signals can change in an instant. Marine biologists study this because it hints at complex social behavior in an animal that is also a fast, clever hunter. Watching squid communicate is like watching emotion become visible. The same body that can vanish into camouflage can also broadcast a message. In the ocean, where a voice may not carry far, a flash can be a sentence, and a pattern can be a warning. A coral polyp can clone itself to expand a reef. A reef begins with something so small you could miss it on your fingertip. A single polyp settles onto a hard surface, then starts to build its tiny home from calcium carbonate. When conditions are right, it can copy itself, creating another polyp beside it, then another. Over time, that repeated process becomes a living sheet, and later a mound, and eventually a complex structure with ledges, tunnels, and shaded rooms. Cloning does not mean the reef is simple. It is a strategy for coverage and resilience. A colony can grow outward into new space, and it can also recover from damage when parts remain alive to regrow. Marine biologists pay close attention to how fast colonies spread, what slows them down, and how water chemistry affects their building materials. This is growth by repetition, and it is how tiny animals become landscape engineers, turning bare rock into a habitat that hosts an entire community. Starfish can regrow lost arms with patient precision. For many animals, losing a limb is a disaster. For a starfish, it can be a brutal setback that still comes with a chance of recovery. If a predator tears away an arm, the sea star can begin rebuilding, slowly reforming tissues, organs, and the structures needed for movement and feeding. The process takes time and it costs energy, so the animal must keep surviving while the repair work continues. Marine biologists study this regrowth because it offers clues about how bodies control rebuilding without losing their overall plan. Cells must divide, specialize, and arrange themselves in the right places, or the new arm would be useless. It is a reminder that the ocean rewards patience. A starfish does not rush. It persists. In tide pools and reefs, that persistence can make the difference between a life that ends abruptly and a life that continues, one careful step at a time. Anglerfish use living lanterns to lure prey in darkness. In the deep sea, where darkness is constant, finding food can feel like searching for a single crumb in an endless room. Some anglerfish solve this with a glowing lure that extends from their head, like a tiny fishing rod. The light often comes from bacteria that live in a special chamber, and together they form a beacon in the black. Small animals drift closer, drawn by curiosity or confusion, and the anglerfish waits with a mouth built for sudden, fast strikes. It is a hunting strategy designed for scarcity. Energy is precious in the deep, so patience can be more valuable than speed. Marine biologists study anglerfish because the lure is not only a trap. It is also an example of partnership, where microbes and fish work together to create a tool neither could make alone. In that darkness, a pinpoint of light can decide who eats and who disappears. Some deep-sea fish have mouths larger than their own bodies. Food in the deep ocean can be rare and unpredictable. A meal might not come for a long time, and when it does, it may be bigger than you expected. Some deep-sea fish are built to take advantage of that gamble. They have jaws that can open astonishingly wide, and stomachs that can stretch to hold prey that seems impossible for their size. This is not about being monstrous for drama. It is about being ready. If you meet a large, drifting animal in a place where meals are scarce, passing it up could be a fatal mistake. Marine biologists see these fish as extreme examples of ocean economics. The body invests in expandable anatomy so it can cash in on rare opportunities. Their bones can be light, their muscles can be spare, and their movements can be slow, all to save energy. In the deep, survival can hinge on one oversized bite. Sperm whales dive for over an hour without breathing. A sperm whale can leave the surface behind and descend into a world of pressure, cold, and darkness, all on a single breath. During these dives, it hunts for squid in deep water, and it relies on sound more than sight. Powerful clicks burst into the sea, bounce off bodies in the distance, and return as information, like a three-dimensional map made of echoes. While the whale is down there, its body manages oxygen with careful efficiency. The heart rate can slow, and blood flow can be prioritized for the most vital organs. Marine biologists have learned much of this through tags that record depth, movement, and sound, then release and float back to be recovered. Each dive is a journey into an environment humans cannot tolerate without machines. It is also a reminder of how far mammals can adapt when the ocean becomes their home. An hour without air is not a stunt. It is a normal working day. Penguins are birds that fly better underwater than in air. A penguin on land can look formal and slightly awkward, but in water it becomes something else entirely. Its wings are shaped for swimming, more like stiff flippers than the broad wings of a soaring bird. Underwater, a penguin can rocket forward with quick strokes, then glide. then turn sharply to chase fast fish. Feathers trap air for insulation, so the bird carries warmth into cold seas, and that same trapped air can also affect buoyancy as it dives. Different penguin species specialize in different waters and prey, from icy southern seas to temperate coasts. Marine biologists often study them to understand how predators hunt in a moving three-dimensional environment. Watching a penguin hunt is like watching an animal built for a second world. It is proof that evolution can take the familiar design of a bird and tune it for the ocean with remarkable precision. Barnacles begin life as tiny swimmers before cementing in place. At first, a barnacle is not a stubborn lump on a rock. It starts as a drifting youngster, swimming through the water like a speck with ambition. During this roaming stage, it samples the sea for the right neighborhood, because the choice matters for the rest of its life. It needs the right flow of water to bring food, the right surface to hold fast, and the right crowd nearby for reproduction. When the moment comes, it commits in a way few animals do. It glues its head to the surface and transforms, building a hard home around itself. From then on, it eats by sweeping the water with feathery limbs, pulling tiny particles into its mouth. Marine biology loves barnacles because they show how dramatic an animal life can be, even when the adult looks motionless and ordinary. Many crabs can sense the scent of food from far away. A crab does not need to see a meal to begin moving toward it. In water, smell spreads as a shifting trail, and many crabs are built to read that trail with sensitive antennae and mouthparts. The tiny trace of something edible can trigger a change in posture, then a quick, purposeful march. They often lift and wave their claws, not to threaten, but to sample the water and steer themselves like living compasses. On a sea floor where visibility can be poor, scent becomes a map that updates every second. That is why a dead fish can draw scavengers from surprising distances, as if the ocean has whispered an invitation. Marine biologists study this because it reveals how animals find resources in a moving environment. It also explains why crabs are such effective recyclers. They can locate hidden scraps, then turn them back into energy that feeds the rest of the ecosystem. Lobsters keep growing throughout life by shedding their shells. A lobster carries its skeleton on the outside, which means growth is not a simple stretch. When the body outgrows its armor, the lobster must escape its own shell. Before molting, it often hides because it will become soft and vulnerable. Then the old shell splits, and the lobster pulls itself free in a slow, careful struggle that looks like an animal being born again. Once out, it drinks in water to expand quickly, creating room before the new shell hardens. Over the following days, minerals lock that fresh armor into place. Marine biologists pay close attention to molting because it shapes lobster survival and fisheries. Timing matters, temperature matters, and stress can matter. A lobster's growth is a series of risky leaps, repeated again and again over a lifetime. It is not steady enlargement. It is a cycle of courage, hiding, and renewal. Mantis shrimp strike so fast they can create tiny shockwaves. A mantis shrimp carries a weapon that seems designed by physics rather than by bone and muscle. Some species have a club-like limb that snaps forward with such speed that the surrounding water reacts violently. The strike can stun prey, crack shells, and even damage hard surfaces, all in a blink. For an animal living among rocks and reefs, this is a way to turn armored meals into dinner. What makes it especially wild is that the strike can create a rapid pressure change in the water, and that can form a bubble that collapses with a sharp burst of force. Marine biologists study these strikes to understand extreme performance and to learn how a small body avoids injuring itself while delivering such power. It is hunting as engineering. In a tight crevice, the mantis shrew does not need a chase. It needs one perfect moment, then impact. Some shrimp snap bubbles that make flashes of light. In shallow waters, a snapping shrimp can sound like crackling static. That noise comes from a claw that closes so quickly it shoots a jet of water forward. The jet can create a bubble, and when that bubble collapses, it produces a sharp pop. In some cases, the collapse can also create a brief flash of light, which feels like a tiny underwater firework. The shock can stun small prey, and the sound can confuse rivals. Entire colonies can snap together, turning a reef into a noisy neighborhood after dark. Marine biologists find this fascinating because it shows how an animal can weaponize water itself. There is no tooth or sting involved. It is pressure, speed, and timing. Snapping shrew also remind us that the ocean has its own soundscape, filled with clicks and pops that carry information to other creatures. In the sea, even a bubble can be part of a survival strategy. Nudibranch sea slugs steal stinging cells for their own defense. A nudibranch can look like a drifting piece of living art, bright, frilled, and almost unreal. Yet it is not color for show. Many nudibranchs feed on animals that carry stinging cells, such as anemones or hydroids, and instead of being harmed, they can store those stinging cells in their own tissues. Later, if something tries to bite them, the borrowed weapons can fire. It is a kind of biological recycling that turns a meal into armor. Marine biologists love nudibranch because their strategies are so inventive. Some advertise danger with vivid colors, as if they are warning the reef to keep its distance. Others blend in and rely on surprise. Either way, they show that defense in the ocean is not always built from scratch. Sometimes survival comes from taking the tools of another animal and making them part of your own story. Some sea slugs can borrow chloroplasts and run on sunlight. A few sea slugs perform a trick that sounds like science fiction. They eat certain algae, and instead of digesting every part, they keep the algae's chloroplasts, the tiny structures that capture light. Those chloroplasts can continue to function inside the slug's body for a while, giving it a second source of energy when food is scarce. It is not the same as being a plant, and it does not replace eating forever. Yet it can change how the animal survives lean periods, especially in bright, shallow water. Marine biologists study this because it blurs a boundary many people assume is fixed. We tend to separate animals and plants into neat categories, but the ocean is full of exceptions. In this case, an animal becomes partly solar-powered by borrowing the machinery of its meal. It is a reminder that evolution does not always invent from nothing. Sometimes it is a clever borrower, finding new uses for what already exists. Clownfish live safely among anemone stings through protective mucus. An anemone is covered in stinging tentacles that can paralyze prey. To most fish, it is a floating danger zone. Yet clownfish can slip among those tentacles as if they belong there. They are protected by a special mucus layer that prevents the stings from firing in the usual way, which turns a deadly trap into a safe home. Inside that shelter, the fish gains protection from predators that will not risk the tentacles. In return, the anemone can benefit from the fish's presence through cleaning, movement of water, or chasing away certain intruders. Marine biologists study this relationship because it shows how survival can be built through partnership rather than brute force. It also explains why specific habitats become so valuable. A single anemone can be a fortress in a busy reef, and the right chemistry on a fish's skin can be the key that opens its door. Cleaner fish run reef stations where bigger fish queue for help. On a reef, you can sometimes find a place where the usual rules of predator and prey seem to pause. Cleaner fish set up small stations, and larger fish arrive to be serviced like customers at a careful clinic. The cleaner picks parasites, dead skin, and debris from gills and mouths, and the client holds still, even when it could easily swallow the cleaner in one bite. That uneasy trust is enforced by reputation and routine. Clients may return, and cleaners that do a good job can become valuable neighbors. Marine biologists study these interactions because they reveal how cooperation can evolve in a competitive environment. A cleaner fish gains a reliable meal, and the larger fish gains health and comfort. The station also becomes a social crossroads, where many species gather within a small space. It is a reef economy built on tiny bites, patience, and a surprising kind of peace treaty. Coral bleaching can happen when heat disrupts a coral's tiny partners. A coral may look like stone, but it lives on a delicate alliance. Inside its tissues, microscopic algae provide much of the fuel that helps it grow and build its skeleton. When the water stays too warm for too long, that partnership can break down. The coral expels the algae, and the bright colors fade, leaving a pale white structure that is still alive but running on emergency power. If conditions improve soon enough, the algae can return and the coral can recover. If the stress continues, the coral can starve and the reef can lose the living layer that gives it strength. Marine biologists track bleaching because it can unfold quickly across large areas and because reefs support so many other species. A reef is not only scenery, it is housing, food, and shelter for entire communities. Reef fish can change their colors to match their surroundings. On a busy reef, being noticed can be dangerous. Many fish can shift their colors and patterns to blend into coral branches, sandy patches, or shadowed rocks. Some changes happen in moments, like a quick costume swap when a predator passes. Others are slower, tied to mood, dominance, or daily rhythms of light. A fish might darken at night, then brighten again in the morning, staying tuned to the reef's changing stage. Marine biologists study these shifts because they reveal how the skin works like a living display. Cells can expand or contract, and layers can reflect light in different ways, producing shimmer, bars, spots, or sudden fades. Color change is not only about hiding. It can also send signals to rivals and mates, or mark a fish's status in a group. On the reef, color is information, and survival depends on reading it quickly. Parrotfish make sand by grinding coral as they feed. A parrotfish often feeds with a mouth built like a sturdy beak. It scrapes algae from hard surfaces, and in the process it bites off bits of coral and rock. Inside the fish, those hard fragments are ground down further, then released back into the ocean as fine sand. Over time, many small meals can become a surprising amount of new shoreline material. This means a reef is not only built by tiny coral animals, it is also reshaped by the creatures that graze across it every day. Marine biologists pay attention to this because it links feeding behavior to landscape change. A fish that seems like a simple herbivore can influence beaches and lagoons. It also helps keep algae from smothering coral, which can support reef health in the long run. In a sense, parrotfish are gardeners and sandmakers at once. Some fish use tools, carrying rocks to crack shells. Tool use can sound like a human thing, but the ocean offers its own clever engineers. Some fish have been observed picking up a hard object, then using it to break open tough prey. They may carry a clam or snail to a chosen spot, then smash it against a rock like a makeshift anvil, repeating the motion until the shell gives way. That behavior shows planning, patience, and a sense of cause and effect. It also shows memory, because a good anvil spot is worth returning to. Marine biologists study these moments because they challenge the idea that fish are simple creatures acting on reflex. Tool use suggests flexible problem solving, and it hints that intelligence can evolve in many forms when food is protected by armor. In the ocean, a rock can become a key, and a stubborn shell can become a puzzle worth solving. Seahorse fathers carry developing babies in a brood pouch. Seahorses flip a familiar story of pregnancy. During courtship, a female transfers eggs into a male's brood pouch, and he fertilizes them and carries them as they develop. Inside the pouch, conditions can be carefully controlled. The father can help regulate salt balance and provide a protected space, which matters in a world full of hungry mouths. When the time comes, he goes through a labor-like process, releasing tiny seahorses into the water, each one already shaped like a miniature adult. Marine biologists are fascinated by this because it shows how reproduction can be rearranged by evolution. It also raises questions about choice and investment. If males carry the pregnancy, courtship and pairing can look different than many people expect. In seahorses, the ocean has written a different script, and it works. Many marine animals hear with bodies tuned to vibration, not ears. Underwater, sound travels fast and far, and it moves through bodies as vibration. Many marine animals rely on that, even if they do not have ears that resemble ours. Fish can detect pressure changes through sensory lines along their sides, which can reveal a nearby swimmer, a shifting current, or the approach of a predator. Some invertebrates sense vibrations through their body surface, reacting to footsteps of crabs or the thrum of waves. In this world, hearing is often more like feeling. Marine biologists study these senses because they shape behavior in ways we do not notice. A fish can orient to a reef by its low rumble, or time its movements to avoid being detected. Vibration sensing can also help animals communicate, especially in murky water where sight is limited. The ocean is not quiet. It is alive with movement, and many creatures listen with their whole bodies. Some fish produce sounds by drumming muscles against their swim bladders. A swim bladder is best known as a buoyancy tool, but in many fish, it can also act like a resonating chamber. Some species have muscles that vibrate against it, producing thumps, hums, or rapid knocks. These sounds can mark territory, help individuals find mates, or keep a group together in low visibility. To a diver, a reef can sometimes seem full of hidden drummers, with pulses that echo through the water at dusk or during breeding seasons. Marine biologists record these soundscapes with underwater microphones, then match patterns to species and behavior. It is a way of learning who is present without ever seeing them. Fish are not silent swimmers. Many live in an acoustic neighborhood where timing and tone carry meaning. When you realize that, the ocean feels less like a quiet blue space and more like a crowded room with constant conversation. Large schools move like one creature through simple local rules. A school of fish can turn, widen, compress, and ripple as if it shares one mind. Yet there is no leader giving orders. The coordination often comes from simple rules followed by each individual, like staying close to neighbors, matching direction, and avoiding collisions. When thousands of fish do that at once, the result is a flowing shape that can confuse predators and protect the group. A hunter may struggle to pick out a single target in the shimmer of bodies. Schools can also become mobile sensors. If a few fish detect danger, their sudden turn can spread through the group in a wave faster than a predator can react. Marine biologists model these movements to understand how collective behavior emerges from small decisions. It is one of nature's most elegant demonstrations of teamwork without planning. The ocean takes simple instincts, then scales them into living geometry. Tuna mussels stay warm, giving them speed in cold water. Most fish match the temperature of the water around them. Tuna are different in a way that changes their entire lifestyle. They can keep parts of their bodies warmer than the surrounding sea, especially in the muscles used for steady swimming. That warmth helps their muscles work efficiently, which supports speed and endurance even when the water is chilly. It is one reason tuna can travel long distances and hunt fast-moving prey across wide ranges. Their bodies are built like engines that rarely idle, and they need to keep moving to push water over their gills. Marine biologists study tuna because they sit at the intersection of physiology, migration, and ocean ecology. A warm-bodied advantage can open new habitats and longer hunting hours. In the open ocean, where food is scattered, that extra performance can mean the difference between finding a meal and missing it. Antarctic icefish evolved clear blood that carries oxygen without red cells. In the icy waters around Antarctica, some fish have taken an unusual path. Icefish lack the red blood cells that give most vertebrate bird its color, so their blood can appear nearly clear. In such cold water, oxygen can dissolve more easily, and the fish have evolved other features to move enough oxygen through their bodies, including larger hearts and wider blood vessels. It is a solution tailored to an extreme environment, and it comes with trade-offs that would be difficult in warmer seas. Marine biologists study icefish because they reveal how flexible life can be when conditions push hard. They also offer clues about how bodies cope with oxygen transport challenges, which is a big question across biology. In the Southern Ocean, where cold can feel like a barrier, evolution has written a rare workaround that seems almost unbelievable at first glance. Polar oceans can be rich with life despite months of darkness. In the far north and far south, winter can feel like a long closing curtain. The sun barely rises, and for stretches, it does not rise at all. Yet the ocean there can still be astonishingly productive. When spring returns, light pours onto water that has been mixed and refreshed through the cold season, and life responds fast. Tiny algae can bloom. Then swarms of krill and other grazers follow, and larger hunters arrive to take advantage of the feast. Some animals time births to this surge, so their young meet the richest weeks of the year. Others carry extra fat through the dark months, living on stored energy until the ocean brightens again. Marine biologists study polar seas because they show how life can be tuned to extreme seasonal clocks. In a place that looks empty from above, the water can be primed for abundance. Sea ice forms a hidden habitat full of algae and larvae. Sea ice is not just a lid on the ocean. It is a living structure with cracks, channels, and pockets that can hold briny water. Inside those tiny spaces, algae can grow, clinging to the underside of the ice or filling sheltered cavities like miniature gardens. That algae becomes an early food source when the surface waters are still too dim or too cold for big blooms. Small animals and larvae can shelter there too, using the ice as a ceiling that hides them from predators below. As seasons change, the ice can release this life back into the water, seeding the ocean with food and new generations. Marine biologists pay close attention to sea ice because it acts like a temporary continent, appearing and disappearing on a schedule. Its texture and thickness can shape who survives the winter, who gets a head start in spring, and how the entire polar food web wakes up each year. Some plankton bloom so brightly they can be seen from space. At certain times and places, the ocean's surface can transform into a visible signature large enough to catch a satellite's eye. Plankton booms can spread across wide regions, changing water color as billions of tiny organisms multiply. What drives it can be a mix of light, nutrients, and the movement of currents that lift richer water toward the sunlit layer. For marine life, a bloom can be a sudden banquet. Small grazers gather, then fish follow, and seabirds often appear soon after, reading the ocean's signals from above. Marine biologists use satellite images to track these events, then pair them with ship measurements to learn what the colors truly mean. A bloom is not only a pretty pattern, it is a pulse of productivity that can feed whole regions, and it can shift quickly if winds and water chemistry change. Tiny copepods store oils that fuel long winters in deep water. Copepods are small enough to look like drifting dots, yet they can be the beating heart of many marine food webs. In some colder regions, certain copepods prepare for winter with a strategy that is both simple and impressive. During the productive season, they build up oily energy reserves in their bodies, storing fuel when food is plentiful. When darkness and cold return, they can sink to deeper water and wait, living off that stored energy for months. It is like carrying a pantry inside your own body, then using it slowly while the surface becomes inhospitable. Marine biologists study this because it explains how energy can be moved and saved in the ocean, even when conditions swing between feast and famine. Those stored oils also become valuable to animals that eat copepods, which means a tiny creature's planning can ripple up to fish, seabirds, and whales. Diatoms build glass-like shells that sink and carry carbon downward. Diatoms are microscopic algae with intricate shells made from silica, which is the same basic ingredient found in glass. Under a microscope, their shapes can look like tiny stained windows, patterned with pores and ridges. When diatoms thrive near the surface, they capture carbon as they grow. Later, when they die or are eaten, many of those shells sink, carrying carbon-rich material toward deeper waters and sediments. That sinking rain can help move carbon out of the surface ocean, where it more easily exchanges with the air. Marine biologists track diatoms because they connect beauty and chemistry in one elegant package. Their growth can respond quickly to nutrient changes, and their sinking can influence how the ocean stores carbon over time. In a single diatom, you can see both artistry and function. And in a bloom of them, you can see a process that matters for the whole planet. The ocean's biological pump helps lock carbon away in the deep. The surface ocean is lively and bright, but it is also a gateway. When plankton grow, they turn dissolved carbon into living tissue. When that tissue is eaten, excreted, or dies, some of it sinks as particles and clumps, drifting down into darker layers. That downward flow is often called the biological pump because it moves carbon from the surface toward the deep ocean, where it can remain for long periods. Not all of it makes the full journey. Many bits are recycled on the way down, feeding midwater life and returning carbon to the water above. Still, the portion that reaches deep layers can reduce how much carbon stays near the air, which matters for climate over long timescales. Marine biologists study this pump by collecting sinking particles, measuring chemistry, and tracking food web dynamics. It is a quiet global process, powered by countless small lives, and it runs every day beneath the waves. Mangroves protect coastlines while nursing young fish in tangled roots. Mangroves grow where land and sea meet, in places that flood with salty water and drain again with the tide. Their roots form dense tangles that slow waves and trap sediment, which can help stabilize shorelines during storms. Inside that maze, young fish and crustaceans find shelter. Predators have trouble chasing through the roots, and currents are softened, so small animals can rest and feed with less risk. Mangroves also collect leaf litter that breaks down into food for smaller creatures, building a foundation for life in shallow coastal waters. Marine biologists value mangrove habitats because they link protection and productivity in one ecosystem. They are not only trees standing in water, they are living nurseries that support nearby reefs and fisheries by giving many species a safer childhood. When mangroves disappear, the coast can lose both a natural barrier and an important cradle for marine life. Seagrass meadows can store carbon for centuries in buried sediments. Seagrass is not seaweed. It is a flowering plant that returned to the ocean long ago and adapted to life underwater. In calm, shallow areas, seagrass can form broad meadows that slow water movement and encourage fine particles to settle. Over time, that settling can bury organic material in the sediments beneath the plants. Because those sediments can be low in oxygen, decomposition slows, and carbon can remain locked away for very long periods. Marine biologists study seagrass because it supports life above and below the leaves. Small fish hide among the blades, grazing animals feed there, and the sediment becomes home to worms and shell builders. Seagrass also helps clarify water by trapping particles, which can improve conditions for nearby habitats. A meadow can look simple at first glance, but it is both a bustling neighborhood and a long-term carbon vault, built leaf by leaf and season by season. Salt marshes filter water and soften the force of storms. Where rivers meet the sea, salt marshes can spread like green quotes across muddy flats. These habitats flood and drain with the tide, and the plants are adapted to salt, shifting water levels, and sticky sediment. As water moves through marsh grasses, suspended particles can settle out, and some pollutants and excess nutrients can be processed by microbes in the mud. That filtering helps improve water quality for nearby bays and coastal waters. Marshes also act like shock absorbers. Their vegetation can reduce wave energy and slow storm surges, which can protect inland areas from erosion and flooding. Marine biologists pay attention to salt marshes because they are busy interfaces, where land and sea exchange materials constantly. They are also nurseries for certain fish and crustaceans that need sheltered shallows early in life. A marsh can look quiet from a distance, yet it is doing heavy work every day, cleaning water and buffering the coast. Estuaries mix fresh and salt water, creating nurseries for countless species. An estuary is a meeting place where river water and ocean water blend, and the result is a constantly shifting environment. Salinity changes with tides, rainfall, and river flow, and that creates a challenging but rewarding home for many species. The water can be rich in nutrients, which can support abundant plankton and the animals that feed on them. Shallow areas warm quickly, and sheltered channels offer protection from open ocean waves. For many fish, crabs, and shrimp, this is the perfect place to grow up. Food is plentiful, and hiding places are everywhere, from mudflats to eelgrass to winding creeks. Marine biologists often call estuaries nurseries for this reason. They also study them because they reveal how sensitive coastal ecosystems can be. Changes upstream can change what arrives downstream, and the estuary feels those shifts quickly. In an estuary, the ocean's future often begins in a river's final bend. The ocean is layered by temperature, shaping where life can thrive. Step into the sea, and you enter a stacked world. Warm surface water floats above colder, heavier water, and those layers do not always mix. That layering can form a boundary that feels like an invisible ceiling to many organisms. Plankton may gather where nutrients rise, but light still reaches. Predators may patrol the edges because prey is concentrated there. In some places, seasonal cooling breaks the layers apart, stirring food upward and giving ecosystems a sudden boost. In other places, strong layering can keep deeper nutrients trapped below, leaving the surface clearer and less productive. Marine biologists track these layers with temperature sensors and water samples because a few degrees can decide who eats, who breeds, and who migrates. The ocean is not one uniform habitat. It is a set of overlapping zones, and temperature is one of the main architects. Some bacteria glow only when their crowd becomes dense enough. A single glowing microbe would waste its energy, because one tiny light is barely visible in the sea. Some bacteria solve that problem with timing. They can sense how many of their neighbors are nearby by detecting chemical signals in the water. When the crowd becomes dense enough, they switch on their light together, like a stadium that suddenly ignites. This is why certain marine animals and algae can appear dark in one moment, then bright in the next. The glow is not random sparkle. It is a coordinated decision made by a community. Marine biologists study this because it reveals how even simple cells can behave like a group. It also explains why light often appears where bacteria gather, such as on organic particles, in biofilms, or within animals that host them. In the ocean, a glow can be a message that only makes sense when many voices speak at once. Marine viruses can influence the chemistry of the whole sea. Viruses in the ocean are tiny, yet they are everywhere, drifting among microbes like invisible sparks. When they infect marine bacteria or algae, they can cause cells to burst. That release sends a pulse of organic material into the water, which other microbes quickly consume. Over huge areas, those countless small bursts can influence how nutrients and carbon move through the ecosystem. It can change what stays in living bodies, what becomes dissolved food for microbes, and what sinks or gets recycled near the surface. Marine biologists take viruses seriously for another reason too. They can shape which microbial species dominate, and that can alter how efficiently the ocean processes chemicals. In a strange way, viruses can act like editors, cutting some populations back and allowing others to rise. They are not only agents of disease, they are also drivers of ocean chemistry, working in quiet, relentless cycles. Many species time reproduction to moonlight and changing tides. For ocean animals that release eggs and sperm into open water, timing is everything. If the water is too still, the gametes may not meet. If it is too turbulent, they may be scattered and wasted. Many species solve this by syncing reproduction to predictable patterns, including tidal cycles and the brightness of the moon. In some coastal habitats, this creates nights when the water seems to awaken at once. Eggs, larvae, and drifting clouds of reproductive cells appear in the currents, and predators show up too, drawn by the sudden abundance. Marine biologists study these rhythms because they reveal how life uses the sky and the sea as a calendar. It is not guesswork, it is scheduling. When a species matches its most important moment to reliable cues, it can increase the odds that the next generation will exist. In the ocean, the moon can be more than scenery. It can be a signal that says, now. Tides can trigger mass spawning events across entire reefs. On certain reefs, there are nights when the water turns into a living blizzard. Many corals and other reef animals release bundles of eggs and sperm in a narrow window, often linked to tides and seasonal conditions. The bundles rise, drift, and break apart, filling the surface layer with countless chances for fertilization. It is both beautiful and practical. By spawning together, these animals increase the odds that eggs will meet sperm, and they can also overwhelm hungry fish and invertebrates with more food than can be eaten at once. Marine biologists plan expeditions around these events because they are hard to predict without local knowledge and careful records. A reef may look unchanged the day before, then suddenly become the stage for a brief, intense surge of new life. It is one of the ocean's most dramatic reminders that reproduction can be communal, synchronized, and startlingly precise. Larval drift can connect reefs separated by hundreds of miles. Many reef creatures begin life as larvae, tiny drifters that do not yet belong to any one home. They float in the plankton, sometimes for weeks, carried by currents that act like conveyor belts. During that time, a larva from one reef can travel far, then settle on a different reef entirely, joining a community it has never seen before. This drift can link distant reefs into a network, sharing genes and rebuilding populations after storms or other losses. Marine biologists study connectivity with ocean models, tagging studies, and genetic clues, because it changes how conservation is designed. Protecting one reef can help seed another, if currents carry larvae between them. Drift also adds suspense to early life. A larva must survive the open water, avoid predators, and still arrive in the right habitat at the right time. In the ocean, the journey can come before the home. Some fish hear reefs from afar and swim home by sound. A reef is not silent. It crackles with snapping shroop, hums with fish calls, and rustles with moving life. Those sounds can travel, and some young fish appear to use them like a beacon. After drifting as larvae in open water, they must find suitable habitat to settle. Smell and vision can help at close range, but sound can carry earlier, especially at night or in murky conditions. Marine biologists have tested this idea by comparing settlement patterns and by recording reef soundscapes, then playing them in controlled settings. The results suggest that the acoustic signature of a healthy reef can act like an address. This makes reefs feel even more alive, because they announce themselves to newcomers. It also means noise pollution can matter in unexpected ways by masking those natural cues. For a small fish searching for home, the difference between a reef and empty water may first be heard, not seen. Salmon return to their birth rivers using smell like memory. A salmon's life can span an enormous range, from freshwater beginnings to years at sea, and then a return upstream that seems almost impossible to miss. One key is scent. Rivers carry unique chemical mixtures shaped by soils, plants, and geology, and salmon can learn that signature early in life. Later, as adults, they can use their sense of smell to recognize the right watershed, then narrow down to the correct tributary. Marine biologists study this homing because it blends biology with landscape, and because it explains why salmon runs are tied to specific places. The journey is not just distance. It is accuracy. Returning to the right river can mean better conditions for eggs and young, and it can preserve local adaptations across generations. When a salmon pushes upstream, it is not wandering. It is following a remembered chemical trail, one that leads back to a birthplace hidden in flowing water. Eels migrate thousands of miles to spawn in distant ocean gyres. Some eels live much of their lives in rivers and coastal waters, then depart on a journey that seems to ignore every convenient shoreline. They head out into the open ocean to spawn in faraway regions, and the young eventually make their way back toward land. This creates a life story split across habitats that could not feel more different, from muddy freshwater to vast offshore seas. Marine biologists have long been fascinated by this migration because parts of it are difficult to witness directly. Tracking eels is challenging, and their spawning areas can be remote. Even so, evidence from larvae and tagging has built a picture of a remarkable loop, where a single species depends on both inland waters and distant ocean. Circulation. It is migration as mystery and commitment, carried out by an animal that often hides by day and travels by night. When an eel leaves home waters, it is beginning a chapter written across an entire ocean. Ocean gyres can trap drifting life and also floating pollution. In the open sea, large circular current systems can form slow rotating regions called gyres. For drifting organisms, a gyre can act like a holding pattern. Floating seaweed can gather there, along with the small fish and invertebrates that shelter within it. That can create a roaming habitat that supports predators too, turning empty-looking water into a subtle oasis. The same concentrating effect can also collect human debris. Lightweight plastic can drift for long periods, and currents can herd it into persistent patches. Marine biologists care about gyres because they reveal how movement creates both opportunity and risk. They show how the ocean can concentrate resources and also concentrate problems. A gyre is not a wall, but it can behave like a basin, gathering whatever floats and keeping it circulating. In a world ruled by currents, where things drift often matters as much as what they are, plastic can become a traveling raft for species crossing oceans. A floating bottle cap or a broken crate can look like trash. Yet at sea, it can also become a tiny island, algae-coated. Barnacles settle. Small crabs or snails may hitch a ride, sheltered from waves by the object's hard surface. Once a community forms, currents can carry it far beyond the coast where it began. That means species can arrive in places they could never reach by swimming, sometimes landing on distant shorelines or remote islands. Marine biologists watch this closely because long-distance rafting can rearrange ecosystems. A newcomer might struggle and fade away. Another might thrive and compete with native life that has never faced it before. What makes plastic so effective is persistence. Natural rafts like wood break down more quickly, while plastic can stay afloat for years. An unwanted material can become a vehicle, turning ocean circulation into a slow, global conveyor. Microplastics can enter food webs at the level of plankton. When plastic fragments become tiny, they start behaving like food-shaped objects. In the ocean's sunlit layer, where plankton feed by filtering or grabbing small particles, microplastics can be taken in by mistake. Once inside, they can take up space without providing nutrition, which may matter most for small animals that live on tight energy budgets. Microplastics can also carry chemicals on their surfaces, and they can move those chemicals into the bodies that swallow them. Marine biologists study this because plankton sit near the base of many ocean food chains. A change at that level can ripple outward, reaching animals we care about and ecosystems we depend on. Tracking microplastics is difficult because they are widespread and varied in size and shape. Still, the idea is simple and unsettling. When plastic becomes small enough, it can blend into the ocean's basic menu, and the first bite can happen at the very start of the food web. Many seabirds mistake floating plastic for food at the surface. From above, a seabird sees a restless mirror of waves and glare, with quick opportunities that disappear in seconds. Many species are tuned to spot floating prey, and that instinct can be tricked by brightly colored plastic or by pieces that resemble fish eggs and small squid. Some plastics also carry the smell of ocean life after they have been in the water long enough, which can make them seem even more convincing to a searching bird. When a bird swallows plastic, the danger is not only choking. Plastic can fill the stomach and reduce appetite, so the bird eats less real food, even when it needs energy most. Chicks can be especially vulnerable if adults bring back the wrong items. Marine biologists document this problem by studying stomach contents, tracking colonies, and linking debris hotspots to feeding routes. A bird that lives by sharp observation can be undone by a false meal that never digests. Ghost fishing gear can keep trapping animals long after it is lost. A net is designed to catch. When it is lost at sea, it can keep doing that job without anyone watching. Lines can drift, snag on reefs, and form loops that trap fish, crabs, and even larger animals that pass through. As those animals die, they can attract scavengers, which can also become trapped, turning the gear into a repeating cycle of harm. Over time, lost gear can abrade corals, scrape seagrass, and damage habitats that took years to grow. Marine biologists and divers sometimes find these nets wrapped around rocks like tangled curtains, still fishing in silence. Recovering them can be dangerous work, yet it can bring immediate relief to a site. This issue is not only about litter, it is about a tool that keeps acting after it is abandoned. In the ocean, a lost net can become an unplanned predator that never gets tired. Ocean noise can mask the calls that whales use to coordinate. For many whales, sound is how the world is measured. Calls can help keep groups together, guide mothers and calves, and coordinate movement through wide, dark water. When human-made noise rises, from shipping to construction to certain sonar sources, it can fill the same frequencies whales rely on. That can shrink the distance over which a call can be heard, like trying to talk across a room that keeps getting louder. Some whales may call more loudly or change their timing, which costs energy and may still not solve the problem. Others may avoid noisy areas, even if those areas contain good feeding habitat. Marine biologists study this with underwater microphones and tags that record both behavior and sound exposure. Noise is invisible, yet it can reshape where animals travel and how they stay connected. In a sound-based world, masking is not an annoyance. It is a serious change to the basic channel of communication. Busy shipping lanes pose a serious collision risk for whales near shore. Whales must surface to breathe, and near major shipping routes that simple need can become risky. A large vessel moves faster than many people realize, and a whale can be hard to spot in choppy water, especially at night or in fog. Some whales also spend time near the surface while feeding or resting, which increases the chance of collision. A strike can cause severe injuries, and it can be fatal even for a very large animal. Marine biologists map these risks by combining whale distribution data with shipping traffic, then looking for overlap zones where danger is highest. Solutions can be surprisingly practical. Slower ship speeds can reduce both collisions and the severity of impacts. Route adjustments can shift traffic away from key habitats during sensitive seasons. It is a reminder that conservation is sometimes about geometry and timing. When whales and ships share the same narrow corridor, the stakes become immediate. Some fisheries use lights and hooks designed to reduce unwanted bycatch. Not every animal caught on a fishing line is the intended catch, and unwanted bycatch can harm vulnerable species. In response, some fisheries have adopted gear changes that steer the catch toward the target. Certain hook shapes can make it harder for sea turtles to swallow a baited hook deeply. Weights and modified rigs can help hooks sink faster, which can reduce seabird interactions near the surface. In some places, lights on nets have been tested to make gear more visible to animals that might otherwise collide with it. Marine biologists work with fishers to test these ideas at sea, because a solution must still allow a working livelihood. The goal is not only good intentions, it is measurable change in what ends up on deck. Bycatch reduction is a kind of design challenge, where small tweaks can prevent large harms. It shows that technology and tradition can meet, and that smarter gear can protect both ecosystems and fisheries. Marine protected areas can help ecosystems recover when well enforced. A protected area is not a magical shield, yet it can change what happens in the water when rules are clear and followed. When fishing pressure is reduced, animals that were frequently removed can grow larger and more abundant. That can restore interactions that keep an ecosystem stable, like predators shaping prey behavior and grazers keeping certain plants in check. Over time, a protected zone can become a refuge where long-lived species have a better chance to reproduce. Marine biologists often monitor these areas with surveys, tagging and underwater video, looking for trends that show real recovery rather than short-term fluctuation. Enforcement matters because A protected area on paper can fail in practice. When it works, the benefits can extend beyond its boundaries through movement of animals and dispersal of young. A protected area is like giving the ocean a quiet chance to rebuild its savings. It does not freeze nature in place. It gives it room to recover. A reef can rebuild if water quality and herbivores return. A damaged reef is not always a lost reef. If the water becomes clearer and cleaner, and if herbivores return in good numbers, the balance can shift back toward coral growth. Herbivores, such as certain fish and urchins, can keep fast-growing algae from taking over open surfaces. That matters because algae can block space and light, making it harder for young corals to settle and survive. With less smothering competition, coral larvae can find footholds, and surviving coral patches can expand. Marine biologists look for early signs of recovery in the small things, like new coral recruits on bare rock and a return of varied reef fish. Recovery can be slow, and setbacks can happen. Yet reefs can surprise us with resilience when conditions improve. This is not a promise that every reef will bounce back. It is a reminder that the pathway exists, and it depends on the fundamentals of habitat and balance. Coral restoration sometimes uses tiny nursery fragments grown and replanted. In some restoration projects, the work begins with small coral pieces that are carefully grown in nurseries. These nurseries can be in the ocean, where fragments are attached to frames or lines, or on land in controlled tanks. As the fragments grow, they can be trimmed and multiplied, creating more living pieces without removing large chunks from wild reefs. Later, the corals are transplanted onto damaged sites, secured so waves do not tear them away. Marine biologists track which types survive best and which placements resist storms and disease. Restoration is not only planting. It is also choosing locations with decent water quality and making sure harmful pressures are reduced. Even a well-planted coral will struggle if the surrounding conditions remain hostile. Still, the idea is hopeful. A reef is built by small builders, and restoration embraces that reality. It uses patience and careful methods to help living structure return, one fragment at a time. Sea level rise can squeeze coastal habitats between water and walls. Along many coasts, nature once had room to move. As sea level crept higher, marshes and mangroves could slowly shift inland, following the changing shoreline. In many places now, roads, seawalls, and buildings block that retreat. The result is a squeeze. Water pushes from one side, and hard infrastructure stands on the other. These habitats can become narrower each year, even if the plants are still healthy. That matters because the shallow edge is where young fish hide, where birds feed, and where storm energy is softened before it reaches homes. Marine biologists call this coastal squeeze, and they map it by comparing habitat boundaries over time. It is a problem of space as much as it is a problem of water. When the coast cannot migrate, it can simply disappear, and the ocean loses one of its most productive borderlands. Ocean warming can shift species ranges toward the poles. Many marine animals live within a temperature comfort zone, and when the ocean warms, that comfort zone can move. Fish may appear farther north than local fishers remember, while other species become rarer in places that once suited them. Some changes happen gradually, and others arrive like a surprise, when a warm spell opens a temporary corridor. Marine biologists track these shifts with surveys, catch records, and tagging, because movement changes who eats whom. A predator arriving in new waters can alter food webs quickly. Warming can also affect timing. Spawning seasons can shift, and migrations can change their schedule, which can cause mismatches with food. These range shifts are not only about animals swimming away. They are about ecosystems being rearranged in real time. The map of marine life is not fixed. It responds to temperature, and the response can be swift. Acidifying seawater can make it harder for shell builders to grow. When the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the air, seawater chemistry changes in ways that can reduce the availability of carbonate ions, which many shell builders rely on. For animals such as oysters, mussels, and some plankton with hard coverings, that can make building and maintaining shells more difficult. The challenge can be strongest early in life, when tiny larvae are trying to form their first protective structures. Marine biologists study this in hatcheries and in the wild, measuring chemistry and watching growth and survival. In some places, natural upwelling brings deeper, more acidic water to the surface, and that can intensify the problem at certain times of year. This is not a visible disaster like a storm. It is a quiet headwind against construction, turning shell growth into a harder job and changing how sturdy protection can be. Some algae can form harmful blooms that spread with changing conditions. Most algae are a normal part of the ocean's living fabric, yet a few species can bloom in ways that harm wildlife and people. When conditions line up, such as warm water, plentiful nutrients, and calm weather, certain algae can multiply rapidly. Some produce toxins that can accumulate in shellfish and move up food chains. Others create dense mats that block light and affect oxygen levels when they break down. Marine biologists monitor these blooms with water sampling, satellite imagery, and beach surveys, because early warning matters for fisheries and public health. Blooms can shift with currents, so a patch can appear far from its origin. They also vary by region, with different species thriving in different waters. The unsettling part is how quickly they can develop. A coastline can seem normal one week, then face closures and wildlife impacts the next, or from microscopic organisms responding to opportunity. Oxygen pool zones can expand, leaving marine life with less breath. Oxygen is not evenly distributed in the sea. In some regions, midwater layers can become low in oxygen, creating zones where many animals struggle to survive. When these low oxygen areas expand, fish and other mobile creatures may be forced into thinner surface layers, crowding into spaces that still hold enough oxygen. That crowding can increase competition and predation, and it can change where fisheries find their target species. Less mobile animals can be hit hardest because they cannot simply swim away. Marine biologists study oxygen levels with instruments lowered from ships and carried by drifting sensors, then connect the data to animal movements and survival. Low oxygen can be influenced by warming, because warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen, and by changes in mixing and productivity. The ocean does not suffocate like a room. It shifts, layer by layer, and those shifts can quietly redraw the boundaries of habitable water. El Niño can rearrange ocean food webs for entire seasons. Some years, the Pacific Ocean changes its pattern in a way that reaches far beyond one coastline. During El Niño, winds and surface waters shift, which can reduce nutrient-rich upulling in some regions and alter where plankton blooms thrive. When the base of the food web changes, everything above it feels the ripple. Fish may move, breeding success can rise or fall, and seabirds can face lean seasons if prey becomes scarce or relocates. Marine biologists watch El Niño closely because it acts like a natural experiment. It reveals how sensitive ecosystems are to temperature and currents, and it shows how fast an ocean can reorganize. The effects can be uneven, with some places seeing warmer, clearer waters, while others experience different storms and rainfall patterns that influence coastal habitats. El Niño is not only a climate headline. It is a seasonal reshuffling of who finds food, where they find it, and who struggles to keep up. Storms can both damage reefs and deliver nutrients that fuel growth. A powerful storm can break corals, topple branching colonies, and turn clear water into a gritty cloud of sand and debris. In a single night, a reef can lose structures that took years to build. Yet storms can also bring a different kind of change. They can stir deeper water and wash nutrients from land into coastal seas, which can boost productivity afterward. In some places, that can mean more plankton, more food for filter feeders, and faster growth for certain organisms during recovery. Marine biologists study storms as disturbances with two faces. They measure physical damage, then track what happens in the months that follow, including which corals survive, which algae take hold, and which fish communities return. A reef story after a storm is not always simple decline. It can be a contest between rebuilding and takeover. The storm sets the stage, then the ecosystem writes the next act. Whale poop can fertilize surface waters and support plankton blooms. Whales feed at depth or across large areas, then return to the surface to breathe. When they release waste near the surface, they can deliver nutrients that would otherwise stay locked deeper down. Those nutrients can act like fertilizer for phytoplankton, which can support more food for small grazers, and in turn for fish and larger predators. Marine biologists sometimes describe this as a whale pump, because it moves nutrients upward in a form that is quickly usable. This does not mean whales control the ocean alone, but it does show they can influence productivity in the places they frequent. The effect can be especially meaningful in regions where nutrients limit plankton growth. It also reframes whales as more than consumers. They are also movers of materials, linking deep feeding grounds to sunlit waters where photosynthesis happens. In the ocean, even waste can be a gift, turning a breath at the surface into a nutrient delivery. Sharks help keep food webs balanced by shaping prey behavior. A shark does not need to eat an animal to affect it. In many ecosystems, the presence of a top predator can change how prey uses space. Fish may avoid certain shallow areas at certain times or move differently when they sense risk. Those behavior shifts can protect habitats because grazing and feeding pressure is spread out rather than concentrated. Marine biologists study these effects by tracking predator movements and observing how prey responds. In some cases, fewer predators can mean prey becomes bolder, and that can lead to overgrazing or intense predation on smaller animals, which then affects vegetation and reef structure. The key idea is that ecosystems are not only built from mouths and meals. They are built from decisions. Where does a fish feel safe? When does it feed? How long does it stay? Sharks can influence those decisions, and that influence can stabilize complex communities. A healthy food web is not only about numbers. It is also about fear, caution, and the invisible choreography of risk. Sea otters protect kelp forests by eating urchins that would mow them down. In some coastal regions, sea urchins can multiply and graze intensely, scraping kelp down to bare rock and creating what is called an urchin barren. Sea otters change that story by hunting urchins, often selecting the ones that are easiest to crack and eat. When otters are present in good numbers, urchin grazing pressure can drop, and kelp has a better chance to grow tall and dense. That kelp then provides shelter and food for many other species, from small fish to invertebrates that cling to fronds. Marine biologists describe this as a classic example of a keystone predator, because one species can influence an entire habitat by controlling a powerful boar, grazer. It is a chain of consequences, built from appetites. An otter's meal can become a forest's survival. In the ocean, a furry hunter at the surface can decide whether an underwater canopy thrives or vanishes. Counting whales from space is becoming possible with modern satellites. Not long ago, studying whales meant ships, binoculars, and a lot of luck. Now, some researchers can scan parts of the ocean from orbit and pick out whale-sized shapes near the surface. The method works best when conditions cooperate, with calm seas, good light, and whales that spend time at the top. Analysts can compare repeated images to estimate how many animals are using an area and how those patterns change across seasons. It is not a replacement for work on the water, because a satellite cannot easily confirm species, age, or health. Still, it can reveal remote hotspots and help guide surveys to the right places. Marine biology is entering an era where the ocean can be monitored at multiple scales at once, from a single breath at the surface to a broad view of entire coastlines. Environmental DNA lets scientists detect species from water samples alone. Every animal in the sea leaves traces behind. Scales, mucus, waste, and tiny fragments of tissue carry DNA into the water. Environmental DNA, often shortened to eDNA, is the idea that a simple water sample can contain clues about which species have recently been nearby. Scientists filter water, extract genetic material, and look for matching sequences that act like a fingerprint. This can reveal elusive animals that hide, travel at night, or live in places difficult to observe. It could also help detect rare species before they are seen, or spot invasive arrivals early enough to respond. Marine biologists love eDNA because it changes the question from "can we find the animal?" to "can we find its trace?" The method has limits because currents move DNA around and signals fade with time. Even so, it is a powerful way to listen for life without ever laying eyes on it. Tiny tags can record a fish's journey with temperature and depth. A fish can vanish into the ocean and leave no footprints, so tagging becomes a kind of storytelling tool. Some modern tags are small enough to attach to fish that would once have been impossible to track. They can record depth changes, water temperature, and sometimes even light levels that help estimate location. When the tag is recovered, the data can reveal a hidden routine. A fish may spend daylight in cooler depths, then rise at night to feed. It may follow a temperature band as it migrates, using comfort as a guide. These records can also show sudden events, like a rapid dive that suggests a chase or an escape. Marine biologists use tag data to understand habitat needs and to design protections that match real movement. A map drawn from a tag is not a straight line. It is a lived path through a three-dimensional world. Underwater microphones reveal hidden soundscapes of reefs and whales. If you drop a hydrophone into the sea, you often hear a world that feels busy and layered. Reefs can crackle with snapping shrimp and pulse with fish calls, while distant whales add low notes that travel across open water. Researchers can leave microphones in place for weeks or months, building a record of daily and seasonal change. A reef may sound different at dusk than at noon, and a migration can announce itself before any animal is seen. Marine biologists use soundscapes to detect biodiversity because different habitats and different communities produce different acoustic signatures. They also use them to measure human impact, since ship noise and construction can alter what animals can hear. In a place where visibility can fail, sound becomes a reliable guide. With careful listening, the ocean stops being a silent blue space and becomes a living broadcast, full of rhythms, warnings, and calls that carry through darkness. Autonomous robots can map the seafloor where ships cannot reach. Large parts of the seafloor are still poorly mapped, partly because ships are slow and the ocean is enormous. Autonomous underwater vehicles, often called AUVs, can change that by traveling close to the bottom and scanning with sonar and cameras. They can fly over ridges, slip through deep valleys, and trace steep slopes that would be hard to survey from the surface. Some can operate for long periods, following pre-planned routes and returning with detailed maps of texture and shape. Marine biologists use these maps to find habitats that are otherwise invisible, such as sponge gardens, coral mounds, and seamount communities. The robot becomes a scout that can go where humans cannot, without the constant tether of a cable. Each mission can reveal new structures and new questions. A smooth plain might hide tracks and burrows. A rocky rise might host an unexpected community. Mapping is not just geography. It is the first step toward understanding who lives where and why. Submersibles have found animals living inside the cracks of ocean rocks. The deep sea floor can look barren from a distance, but close up, it can be full of tiny doorways. Cracks, fissures, and pores in rock create sheltered spaces where water flows and food particles can collect. With submersibles and close-range cameras, scientists have discovered animals using these hidden microhabitats, tucked into places a net would never sample. Some are small filter feeders that benefit from steady flow. Others are grazers that scrape microbial films from stone. Living in cracks offers protection from predators and strong currents, and it can provide stable conditions in an otherwise harsh environment. Marine biologists are fascinated by this because it expands the idea of habitat. It is not only reefs and vents and open mud. It is also the architecture inside the rock itself. Each crevice can function like a tiny apartment, and a field of fractured stone can become a sprawling neighborhood, quietly occupied in the dark. Deep-sea corals can live for centuries in cold darkness. When people hear coral, they often imagine warm, shallow reefs. Yet there are corals that live far below sunlight, where the water is cold and the pace of life is slow. These deep-sea corals do not rely on photosynthetic partners. Instead, they capture food drifting down from above, filtering particles and plankton from passing currents. Because growth can be very slow, some colonies can persist for centuries, building fragile branches over long spans of time. Those branches create habitat for other animals, offering perches, shelter, and feeding grounds in places that might otherwise be plain seafloor. Marine biologists study deep-sea corals because they are both vulnerable and valuable. A single destructive event can erase a structure that took generations to form. They also hold clues about past ocean conditions because long-lived skeletons can preserve chemical records as they grow. In the deep, coral becomes a patient historian, building and recording at the same time. Some sponges may live for thousands of years on the seafloor. A sponge can seem simple, yet some species may be among the longest-lived animals on Earth. In cold, stable, deep water, certain large sponges can grow very slowly, layer by layer, year after year. That slow pace can add up to astonishing lifespans, potentially stretching into thousands of years for some individuals. A long-lived sponge becomes more than an organism. It becomes a structure that influences water flow and provides shelter for small creatures that live within its folds and channels. Sponges also filter enormous volumes of seawater over time, removing tiny particles and shaping local water clarity and nutrient cycles. Marine biologists study these ancient sponges to understand resilience, growth limits, and the history of deep ecosystems. If a sponge has been alive for longer than recorded human history, it has endured countless changes in the ocean above it. That kind of persistence is both inspiring and sobering, because it can be lost quickly if the seafloor is disturbed. The seafloor holds methane hydrates, ice that burns when warmed. In some seafloor sediments, methane molecules can become trapped inside a cage of frozen water, forming what is called methane hydrate. It looks like ice, Yet if it is brought to warmer conditions and exposed to flame, it can release methane that burns. This strange substance exists because deep water pressure and low temperature can stabilize the hydrate structure. Marine scientists study hydrates for several reasons. They can store large amounts of methane, which matters for energy discussions and for understanding greenhouse gases. Hydrates can also influence seafloor stability. If conditions change and hydrates break down, sediments can weaken, which can contribute to underwater slope failures in some settings. Hydrate deposits are also linked to seep ecosystems, where methane escaping from sediments can support unique communities of microbes and animals. The seafloor is not only rock and mud. In places, it holds a chemical vault that behaves like ice, fuel, and habitat support all at once. Brine pools are underwater lakes so salty that many animals cannot enter. Imagine a lake on the sea floor, complete with a shoreline, except the water in it is far saltier and denser than the seawater above. That is a brine pool. Because the brine is heavier, it can settle into depressions and form a distinct layer that does not mix easily. The boundary can look like a shimmering surface, and crossing it can be deadly for many animals, which is why some researchers describe it as a kind of underwater trap. Yet, life still finds a way nearby. Microbes can thrive at the edges, using chemical gradients like a buffet line. Some specialized animals patrol the margins, feeding where conditions are harsh for most others. Marine biologists study brine pools because they show how chemistry can carve habitats as clearly as mountains and valleys do. They also offer clues about how life might persist in extreme environments where the rules of normal seawater no longer apply. Certain worms thrive in vent heat that would scald unprotected skin. Down near hydrothermal vents, the seafloor can feel like a furnace sitting in an ice bath. Hot fluids surge out, and the surrounding water can shift from freezing cold to dangerously warm over the space of a few steps. In that steep gradient, some worms live close enough to the heat to make your instincts recoil. Their survival comes from bodies and microbes adapted to extremes, with proteins that keep working when most biology would unravel. Food is not grown by leaves or sunlight down there. It is made from chemicals in the vent fluids, and the worms position themselves where that chemistry is richest. Marine biologists study these animals because they redefine what habitable means. They also show how life can use heat and minerals as opportunity rather than threat. A vent field is not just harsh. It is a strange kind of oasis, built on extremes. Tube worms grow without mouths, fed by bacteria living inside them. A giant tube worm can look like a bright plume sprouting from a pale tube, yet it has no mouth and no stomach for hunting. Instead, it hosts bacteria inside a special organ, and those bacteria turn vent chemicals into food. The worm becomes a living home, delivering the right ingredients through its blood and receiving nourishment in return. It is not a passive arrangement. The worm must manage oxygen, sulfides, and waste, while keeping its internal partners thriving. Young tube worms begin life as larvae, and they must find the right vent habitat at the right moment to start this partnership. Marine biologists are fascinated by this because it shows an animal outsourcing digestion to a microbial workforce, then scaling up to a size that seems impossible for a place without sunlight. It is a reminder that in the ocean, a body can be built around cooperation. What looks like one creature is also a carefully balanced community. Some fish carry antifreeze proteins that stop their blood from icing. In polar seas, seawater can sit below the freezing point of fresh water, and ice crystals can form in ways that spell danger for most fish. Some species survive by making antifreeze proteins that bind to tiny ice crystals and prevent them from growing. That keeps the fish's body fluids from turning into a slush that would damage cells and organs. It is a molecular defense, working quietly in every heartbeat. Marine biologists study these proteins because they are precise and powerful. A small change in how a protein grips ice can mean the difference between life and lethal freezing. These adaptations also help explain why certain fish can live in waters that feel unimaginable to humans. The polar ocean is not only cold. It is chemically tricky, with ice always nearby. Antifreeze proteins let a fish move through that hazard as if it were ordinary water. The Mariana Trench has life under pressures that crush most materials. At the deepest parts of the ocean, pressure becomes a dominating force, pressing in from every direction with relentless weight. In places like the Mariana Trench, the water above forms a column so immense that most surface animals would be destroyed quickly. Yet, life is there. Small crustaceans, strange fish, and hardy microbes occupy the hadal zone, feeding on whatever drifts down from far above and on resources within the peen. Sediments. Their bodies are adapted at the cellular level. Membranes, enzymes, and proteins must keep working without being warped by pressure. Marine biologists explore these depths with landers and submersibles that can survive the same forces, then bring back video and samples that feel almost unreal. The trench is not crowded like a reef, but it is not empty either. It is proof that biology can persist where physics seems to say no, and that the ocean's deepest places are still part of Earth's living world. Many deep-sea animals are soft-bodied because pressure supports them. In the deep ocean, pressure is crushing, but it is also strangely stabilizing. For many animals, being soft can be an advantage because there is no need for heavy skeletons to resist gravity the way there is on land. Water holds you up, and pressure presses evenly, so delicate, gelatinous bodies can drift with very little energy cost. That is why the deep can be full of animals that look like living glass, with bodies built for buoyancy and patience. Soft tissues can also help with swallowing large meals, expanding when opportunity appears, then returning to a resting shape. Marine biologists study these forms because they challenge our idea of what an animal should look like. We are used to firm muscles and hard bones. The deep rewards other designs, where slow movement, low energy, and flexible anatomy can be the winning strategy. In that darkness, softness is not weakness. It is a way to fit the environment. Some species use red light in the deep, where almost nothing sees it. Most colors disappear quickly underwater, and red light is usually the first to vanish with depth. That is why the deep ocean seems blue or black, and why many deep-sea animals cannot perceive red at all. Yet a few species take advantage of that blindness. They produce red bioluminescence, and some can also detect it, creating a private channel in a world of darkness. It can function like a secret flashlight for spotting prey that thinks it is hidden, or like a covert signal between individuals that most neighbors cannot read. Marine biologists find this astonishing because it is evolution making a locked room, then inventing the key for only a few. The deep is full of glowing blues and greens, but red light is rarer and more revealing. It turns darkness into a selective advantage, where invisibility depends on what your audience can see. In that hidden spectrum, the deep ocean becomes even more layered and mysterious. Bioluminescent lures can also act as decoys that detach and escape. In the deep sea, light can be bait, but it can also be misdirection. Some animals produce glowing secretions or luminous clouds that they release when startled, leaving a bright distraction behind while they slip into darkness. Others can shed parts of their bodies, such as a detachable glowing tip or a breakaway appendage, which keeps wriggling and shining as the predator focuses on the wrong target. The idea is simple and dramatic. If attention is the most valuable currency in the deep, then a full spotlight can buy you a clean escape. Marine biologists study these tactics because they reveal how predation shapes behavior in a place where hiding spots are scarce. On a reef, you might flee into a crevice. In open water, you may need to create your own cover, and in the deep, cover can be made of light. A decoy is not just defense. It is storytelling, where the predator is lured into a plot twist. The ocean floor preserves ancient climate history inside layers of mud. The seafloor is not only a habitat, it is also an archive. Year after year, tiny particles drift down from the surface, including dust, volcanic ash, and the remains of microscopic organisms. They settle into layers, and over long stretches of time, those layers build a quiet record of changing oceans. Scientists extract sediment cores, which are long cylinders of mud that can be read like a timeline. Within them are clues about temperature, ice volume, productivity, and even past storminess, preserved in chemistry and in the types of shells found at different CAF depths. Marine biologists and oceanographers use these records to understand how marine ecosystems responded to earlier shifts and which changes unfolded. Quickly versus slowly. It is one of the most beautiful ideas in earth science. The ocean keeps diaries without ink. It writes in minerals and microscopic fossils, and it stores those pages in darkness until someone learns how to read them. Marine fossils reveal that oceans have changed chemistry many times before. Marine fossils are not only bones and shells, they are chemical witnesses. The composition of ancient shells, the kinds of organisms that dominate certain layers, and the sudden appearance or disappearance of reef builders can all hint at shifts in ocean chemistry. Some periods show signs of low oxygen, when certain animals struggled and others adapted. Other times reflect changes in acidity and carbonate availability, which influenced how easily organisms could build hard skeletons. By comparing fossils from different ages and places, scientists can piece together stories of past oceans that felt very different from today's. Marine biologists use this deep history to understand resilience and vulnerability because it shows how ecosystems reorganize when chemistry changes. Fossils also remind us that the ocean is not a static backdrop. It is a dynamic system that has repeatedly reinvented its living communities. Each fossil bed is a snapshot of an ocean mood, captured in stone and carried forward through time. Marine biology keeps expanding because the ocean still hides vast unknown worlds. Even now, there are places in the ocean that remain lightly explored, not because they are empty, but because they are hard to reach and hard to study. Darkness, pressure, distance, and rough weather can all limit what we can observe. Yet every new tool, from better sensors to smarter sampling methods, tends to reveal more life, more behavior, and more unexpected connections than we predicted. Marine biology grows because the ocean is not one mystery. It is thousands of interlocking mysteries, from microbes that shape chemistry to animals that navigate without landmarks. It also grows because discovery often arrives in ordinary moments. A new species turns up in a net. A camera captures a behavior no one suspected. A water sample hints at a presence just out of sight. The feeling is not that we are finishing a map. It is that we are finally learning how much map there is to draw. The ocean rewards curiosity, and it keeps that reward renewable. As we come to the end of our journey through marine biology, you can let the ocean keep moving without you. We've wandered from bright coastal shallows into the deep, where darkness is ordinary and life makes its own light. We've drifted past coral cities built by tiny animals and through kelp forests that rise like living towers. We've listened for the crackle of reefs the long reach of whale voices, and the hush of wide midwater layers that hold more bodies than we ever guessed. We've met travelers and shapeshifters, creatures that navigate by magnetic clues, that carry their young in unexpected ways, that cooperate, hide, hunt, and rebuild. We've even touched the edges of the unseen, with microbes, drifting larvae, and the hidden chemistry that links breath, climate, and the living sea. If you enjoyed this time beneath the surface, you might like, subscribe, or leave a comment with what surprised you most. It helps this channel reach other curious minds, and it keeps these late-night explorations going. But for now, you do not need to hold on to every detail. Let the facts settle like sand. Let the images blur into something softer. Feel your shoulders soften and allow your jaw to unclench. Take a slow breath in and let it out as if you are emptying the day from your body. And if you are still awake, there will be another video waiting on your screen, ready to carry you a little farther. Otherwise, let the ocean fade to a calm, steady hush in the background of your thoughts. Sleep well, and good night.